22-year-old Eiko Taguchi was kidnapped in 1978. The previous year, 13-year-old Megumi Yokota disappeared. Susumu Takashi was taken in 1976. And Hitomi Soga was abducted in 1978, age 19. Anacha Panchoy from Thailand also vanished in 1978, as did Romanian Dowina Bumbea. Among the long list of those who have disappeared, there may also be many more European citizens, who, like thousands of others, were victims of a state policy of kidnapping organized by North Korea 40 years ago. Hostages of various nationalities taken to teach North Korean spies their languages and the capitalist way of life, so that the spies could better infiltrate foreign countries. Several dozen of those kidnapped are still alive and are still being forcibly kept somewhere in North Korea. In Tokyo, everyone has heard about the kidnappings. The return of the Japanese citizens taken by the North Koreans has become a national priority. Two people symbolize the movement more than anyone else. They are retired couple Sakie and Shigeru Yokota. For the last 35 years, they have determinedly attended conferences, demonstrations, and appeared in the media. They want to know what happened to their daughter, Megumi, who was kidnapped while on her way home from badminton training in 1977. She was just 13. Sakie and Shigeru Yokota have been looking for their daughter ever since. They have looked everywhere and are out of their minds with worry.
I
was going crazy. I wanted to die. I stood looking at the ocean and I wanted to throw myself in. I went really crazy. But I couldn't carry on like that. I needed to look after her twin brothers, to feed them and take care of them. But when I was alone, I cried constantly. I couldn't stop myself. I would go looking in the town for Megumi. If I saw a girl the right age, I would tell myself that she looked like Megumi. And I would grab her to look at her face, to check it wasn't her. I was just desperate to see her face. But it was never her.
I told her, no, it's not her.
He always said it to me, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to go and check, but it was never her. I did it so many times.
When Megumi vanished, the family lived in this small village in Niigata, north of Tokyo on the west coast of Japan. Toshiaki Takeda spent a long time on Megumi's case. Here's the house, and we lost trace of her at the end of that road. The former policeman still clearly remembers the first hours of the investigation. It was around here that she disappeared. The police dog lost her scent here. He lifted his head because he couldn't smell anything more. The trail just went cold. The teenager disappeared 300 meters from the sea without trace. We could not conclude it was a kidnapping because there was no ransom demand. She just disappeared. She could have run away, but she had no reason to do so. The months passed and turned into years. In 1997, the shocking truth finally comes out. Megumi Yokota was in fact kidnapped by North Korea. The information came from a former North Korean spy. Megumi was in fact kidnapped and then transported by boat. She was calling out and making a lot of noise, and so she was thrown down in the hold. Little Megumi was desperately trying to escape, but it was in vain. He told us that she had tried to pull the doors off with her bare hands. She carried on until her hands bled. This region on the west coast of Japan is the closest point to North Korea. The two countries are separated by only 900 kilometers here. You see over there? It is Sado Island, and just behind that is North Korea.
The
boat must have passed the island and then headed straight towards North Korea. Megumi Yokota was in fact kidnapped and then taken by force to North Korea by boat. The revelation caused an immense scandal in Japan, and since then the kidnappings have remained a priority for the Japanese police. We have a discreet meeting with Japanese security agents in a Tokyo restaurant. Off camera, they talk to us at length about several cases of kidnapping. A few days later, the police send us the photos of a house by email. Up until very recently, it belonged to a North Korean doctor who lived in Japan. The house is in Chiba, south of Tokyo on the coast. According to the police, in Chiba, several Japanese citizens were taken by force to North Korea, and among them was a young boy of 19, abducted in 1976, Susumu Takashi. This is his brother, Fujita. We asked him to accompany us to the house. He spent decades searching all over Japan for his brother, Susumu. It's here. And just behind is the sea. And it's all closed up. He's sure that today he is at last getting closer to the truth. The house is locked. The North Korean doctor died a few months ago. It's the first time that Fujita Takashi has come here. I'm going to look inside. That must be the bathroom. And in front of the house, a little path leads down. Where does this go? Below, the garden is very neglected. Between the high grass, we find a path that takes us to a small door and a discreet stairway. And here... this must be a private beach. Seeing the beach, I can imagine what happened. A little boat arrived here, and after there are two ways of leaving. To go to North Korea, you go north, pass by Hokkaido, or go south off Kyushu. Fujita Takashi has no more doubts that his brother was kidnapped by North Korea on this very beach. He finds this discovery overwhelming. I ask myself how he must have felt. I realize how difficult it must have been for him. It's very painful to think about that. He was probably brought here just after he was kidnapped. I think that if the police had looked here, if they'd found him then, they could have saved him. But Fujita knows that his brother is still alive. thanks to this photo taken in Pyongyang by a North Korean defector who sent it to him a few years ago. Compared with his ID photo, here is Susuma Takashi after 37 years in North Korea. It leaves one question. How did the North Koreans escape the attention of the Japanese Navy? Maybe an answer can be found here at the headquarters of the Japanese Coast Guard. They keep their best prize in this hangar. It's a North Korean spy boat. And here, the incredible images captured by the Coast Guard themselves during the dramatic events that unfolded that day. It's the 21st of December 2001. A trawler boat appears in Japanese territorial waters, and they're acting suspiciously. Stop where you are, cut the engines now. And despite the warning shots, the boat refuses to obey and dashes off to the west, with the Japanese Coast Guard in hot pursuit. The naval battle lasts 6 hours. Immobilized by the shells, the boat catches fire. On board, the North Koreans are trying to get rid of all the proof of their activities. The motor has broken down, and in the end they are boarded by the Japanese Coast Guard. They're welcomed with Kalashnikovs and rocket launchers. In the middle of the night, the boat sinks, resulting in the death of all 15 North Koreans on board. In 2002, the boat is brought up from the seabed by the Japanese authorities. It will reveal many secrets about the espionage methods and the kidnappings by North Korea. Today, Japanese tourists come from all over the country to admire the ghost ship that could have kidnapped any one of them. The wreck housed a massive arsenal, anti-aircraft guns, rocket launchers, grenades, assault rifles, and also this underwater scooter, which is completely indispensable when leading an espionage mission. An officer from the Coast Guard is here to explain to the tourists the incriminating evidence found on the fake fishing boat. He is most proud to show the back of the vessel. The giant door opens, but there is nothing inside. The reason: it used to house this small spy boat, which now takes pride of place in the exhibition. This little boat is very difficult to detect from far away. It is very fast, and when the spies used it for kidnappings, it was impossible to stop because it could very quickly hide in the large spy boat. And then it's too late. It becomes impossible to detect and to stop. Conceived by the spy masters in North Korea, the boat was destined to fool the enemy until its capture. Thanks to this type of spy boat, North Korea was able to kidnap dozens of Japanese citizens. But to what end? This is Seoul, South Korea, the 12th most powerful economic nation in the world, despite the tension with its communist neighbors. And in the capital, there are many North Korean defectors and refugees. This man is a former North Korean spy. He's been living in Seoul for 13 years, and he is still under police protection. Im Chun-hyung knows all about the kidnappings by North Korea. He once helped organize them. I was part of the training unit. Today it has a different name. It is called a storm unit. When you join the army, you have to take an oath. My life is not my life. I give it to the nation. It means you're no longer master of your own life or decisions. As soon as you put on the uniform, you have no life.
이제 그 요인 뭐 납치라든가 암살이라든가 뭐 이 남한에 대한 테러라든가 뭐.
It was our mission to infiltrate a country considered an enemy of the state and kidnap the citizens of that country.
나쁜 행동들.
South Korea and Japan were the targets.
참 이제 영광으로 생각하고 당연한
At that time, it was thought of as the only way to protect the regime.
살기 위해서는 그런 게 필요하고 이제 우리가 죽어야 된다는 이제 그런 입장이라는 거예요.
Kim Jung II didn't cross paths with Mitsuhiro Suganuma from Japan, but these two spies were engaged in a remote battle. This was a reward given by the Navy. I was a professor at the School of War at the time. For a long time, Mitsuhiro Suganuma led the counter-espionage department of the Public Safety Agency of Japan. He confirms that all the Japanese kidnappings were part of a precise plan. Their job was to teach their native language to the Pyongyang spies. North Korea's goal is revolution. They want to invade South Korea and unify the two countries. And to be able to do that, they need to be able to pass unnoticed in the South. To look like and act like they are Japanese, so that they don't get arrested. That's why they need to kidnap Japanese people, to teach them the language, the manners, the comportment to their spies. North Korea had always denied the kidnappings, but in 2002 that all changed due to one historic meeting. In Pyongyang, the Japanese Prime Minister met with North Korean dictator Kim Jung II. The historic moment came after several hours of discussion. Kim Jong-il finally admitted to the Prime Minister Koizumi the sad truth that North Korea had indeed kidnapped Japanese citizens. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea have given us some new information on the issue of kidnappings that we have been asking them about. I argued resolutely with Kim Jong-il, and he admitted, honestly, that the North Koreans have kidnapped our citizens. He apologized and has promised to do all in his power to stop this from happening again. According to Tokyo, 17 Japanese citizens were taken by the North Koreans. One month after admitting their guilt, the North Koreans free 5 Japanese citizens. The 5 returned to their homeland after a quarter century of silence. Today, after 24 years, I'm able to set foot in my own country, in the town where I grew up. I have no words. Out of the 17 taken, only 5 were freed because, according to Pyongyang, all the others are dead. They even provided the death certificates. The causes of death are varied: car accident, poisoning, heart attack, cirrhosis of the liver. Included is a death certificate for Megumi. She apparently killed herself in 1993. However, the families are suspicious because all the certificates were issued by the same hospital. All the 7 kidnapped, who are supposed to be dead, were issued death certificates from the same hospital. even though they lived in different regions. So we don't trust the North Korean authorities at all. It seems likely that they just made copies of death certificates and changed the names, putting their stamp on afterwards.
If we put them on top of each other, we can see that all the stamps are in exactly the same place.
Pyongyang even delivered a sample of what they said was Megumi's DNA, but it doesn't match that of one taken when she was a teenager. The Yokotas are convinced that their daughter is still alive. Their hope comes from this document with a photo of Megumi in Pyongyang. They also have the testimony of the 5 liberated Japanese victims, including that of this woman, Hitomi Soga. She knew Megumi well and claims to have lived with her for several months in Pyongyang in the 1980s. Hitomi Soga was taken at the age of 19, at the same time as her mother, who is still missing.
The sky, the earth, the trees are all saying, "Welcome back home."
She doesn't want to talk about her years of captivity in North Korea, but the whole of Japan knows her story. Her destiny was linked to that of her American husband, Charles Jenkins. In 1965, Charles Jenkins was a sergeant in the American Army on posting to South Korea. To avoid taking part in the Vietnam War, he deserted and fled to North Korea. Forced to serve the communist regime, he was even an actor in the propaganda films produced by the North Korean government, such as here, all made up and playing the role of the nasty American in a successful North Korean series called The Heroes Without Name.
Is that so?
A prisoner of the regime, he stayed in Pyongyang for 39 years. He was finally freed in July 2004, along with 2 daughters born in North Korea. He was welcomed by his wife, Hitomi Soga, who had been liberated 2 years earlier. To meet this extraordinary family of Cold War escapees, we take the ferry. It is nearing the end of summer and hundreds of Japanese tourists take the boat to Sado Island. In the Middle Ages, the island was nicknamed the Cursed Island. Aristocrats and samurais who opposed the regime were exiled here. Today, the island is much more welcoming, and its most famous inhabitant is Charles Jenkins. He lives on the island with his wife and 2 daughters, and has been given Japanese nationality. There is a telling phrase at the entrance to the museum where he works. "Now I'm the happiest I've ever been." The museum is about the history of the island, and Charles himself has also become a local attraction. Thanks to him, the shop selling traditional cakes is always full. And all the tourists have just one thing in mind, to get their photo taken next to Charles Jenkins. The former deserter lives peacefully on this island, but even today, he says he's still frightened.
Do you go out at night on Sado Island?
Not usually, no.
Why?
I don't see no need to go anywhere really, and I don't want to be picked up by North Korea.
You still think they can, have some revenge against you?
Well, I put it like this: anybody could be massacred, you can say, very easy.
Yeah.
It has been 8 years since he was freed, but the former soldier will never forget those first years in North Korea. The constant fear, communist indoctrination, and the regime's principles still haunt him.
Whether you want to or not, you study. You study and you study. And if they asked you, like, what is Juche ideology? and you cannot say it, you're in trouble. For example, even today I remember, Juche sa sang idan ha mari ro ma ha ya. Help me gua console we juin imida jung imia. Help me gua console ul chutong han and hinda imida jung eki dan sa sang imida.
What does it mean?
It just adds up. Juche sa. The Juche ideology is the master of everything and decides everything. Man is nothing without Juche. That's what Kim Jung II created. And it's brainwashing.
And you still remember it today?
I remember it till today. Why? They may ask me. And if you can't say it, you're going to study, and study. Sometimes 17 hours a day. At times you sit with your legs crossed for an hour with your hands on the floor. Punishment. After 1 hour, change over. Legs crossed this way and you cross your arms like this. It's punishment.
That's what they made you do?
Huh?
That's what they made you do?
Of course.
After his ideological re-education, Jenkins became a film star. He had a privileged life in North Korea. He even had the right to get married to a woman graciously delivered to him by the regime. She was Hitomi Soga, a Japanese citizen kidnapped 2 years earlier.
They told me they would give me an Asian girl, a good one. I was only with her about a week. I went to the movies and they told me about the abduction. I come back and I told her. She said, me? What? She didn't want to talk because she didn't know if the house was bugged or not. So we went outside. And then she told me how she was abducted, her and her mother, not far from here. They were coming back home. 2 men were following them. Well, after the 2 men followed them, they got almost home, they grabbed them, put her in a bag over his shoulder and to the river.
It was here that the young girl of 19 and her mother were forcibly taken one day in 1978. Hitomi Soga was to be a prisoner of North Korea for 24 years. To this day, she still doesn't know what happened to her mother. In Japan, Hitomi Soga is not the only one living with the pain. The abductions have devastated dozens of other families as well. The kidnappings have become a national cause, and the country now even has a minister to oversee the issue. However, the negotiations are tense and difficult in the face of North Korean inflexibility. You know, the families of those taken are getting old. They are now all 70 or 80 years of age. I keep telling the North Koreans that it is important to liberate the remaining kidnapped whilst their families are still alive. The minister is using the testimony of the 5 released by Pyongyang to put the pressure on. All 5 agree that there are other kidnappees that are still alive in North Korea. One man investigates tirelessly. He was the head of a commission that investigated and has already delivered a list of 71 other people that were kidnapped by North Korea. A much larger number than the 17 officially approved cases. And the list of possible kidnapped victims grows every day. There are now nearly 500 names on the list. We have around 470 files. We were able to find about 50 people in Japan. Some had become homeless. Others had died or had had accidents. But despite 10 years of investigations, We have been unable to find any trace of the others. Some of the cases are very troubling, and we therefore believe that the rest of those on the list are likely to have been taken by force or convinced to go to North Korea. I don't know exactly how many they kidnapped, how many they trapped. No matter how many there are, it is important to remember them and to keep hope alive by any means necessary. The families send messages every day over the shortwave radio to the possible kidnap victims in North Korea. This morning, it's a long letter from Sakie Yokota, Megumi's mother.
My darling Megumi, 35 springs have passed since I saw your face. Being forced to live in North Korea was not at all the life you had imagined for yourself.
The communist regime reacts to these transmissions in the same way as they did during the Cold War. They jam the signal, forcing the radio station to regularly change frequencies. That sound means that the North Korean army are jamming our frequency. They jam the radio so that no one can listen to our programs. North Korea still considers itself to be a country at war, and their main enemy is still South Korea, a country that has not been spared in the campaign of kidnappings. In fact, they were the very first victims. And as is often the case in South Korea, the families put their hope in God, that they will one day see their loved ones again. This man has been fighting for his father for more than 40 years. In 1969, a Korean Air passenger plane was hijacked and forced to land in Pyongyang. There were 46 passengers on board. A few weeks later, the North Koreans freed around 30 people, but they kept the plane, the flight team, and 5 passengers. Among them was Hwang In-cheol's father. I've heard it said that sometimes, after an informal trial, the people who have been kidnapped were executed. Even if he is not dead, my father could not live like that. His conscience and his beliefs mean he cannot live under such duress. He has become a slave, and he must have had to change himself to fit the tastes of his jailers. Hwang In-cheol founded an association to educate the public about the tragic events surrounding the disappearance of the passengers of Flight YS-11, who are still imprisoned in North Korea. He was only 2 years old when his father was kidnapped, and has only a few vague memories of him, but he has kept every clipping from the newspapers at the time. The passengers tortured with electricity. The survivors talk about their 66 days of hell. Hwang In-cheol has spent his whole adult life fighting so that a father he barely knew wouldn't be forgotten. In fact, I've never been able to have a normal life. For my whole life, it has been difficult. That's all I know. I've spent my life trying to fight for my father and trying not to put that burden on my daughters. I continue to fight for my father, but at the same time, I have financial worries. I'm not in a good position in society. I'm in a social minority. I have to look after my wife and children. There are thousands of families here that have been completely torn apart. Some associations estimate that more than 3,800 South Koreans have been kidnapped by the North since the end of the war in 1953. Many Korean and Japanese people have been victims of the campaign of kidnapping by North Korea, but there are also victims from other countries. Former deserter and prisoner Charles Jenkins can confirm this. Charles Jenkins' book revealed to the public for the first time the scope of the program of abductions by the Pyongyang regime. Charles Jenkins even managed to bring back photos from life in North Korea, such as this souvenir photo of the cliched family holiday by the seaside. One of the most interesting things in these photos is the Asian woman in the background.
I lived right 3 steps from her apartment for, what, 7 years?
She is Anocha Panjoy, a Thai national who officially disappeared without trace from Macau in 1978. And here she is, 35 years later, in North Korea.
Yes,
This is Anocha?
that's her. No doubt. She's never happy. No one never happy in North Korea. They were abducted. She always wanted to go back home, just like my wife.
On top of the kidnappings of Japanese and South Koreans, it seems that a Thai citizen was also abducted. To verify this information, we head to Thailand and find this man. Tomoharu Ebihara investigates for a Japanese association for the families of the kidnapped. He takes us to see the family of the young Thai woman. Her mother and father died many years ago. Her only remaining family now are her brother and nephew. Not her. That's not my sister, but here she is. That's my sister. She disappeared in 1978, and we have had no news from her for 20 years. When I learned that she'd been kidnapped, I couldn't believe it. Why would someone want to hurt her? Why would they take her? But I feel that she is alive. I just know it. For 35 years, Anocha's brother Sukam has conserved, like a shrine, all of his little sister's things, ready for when she returns. For Tomoharu Ebihara, the kidnapping of this young Thai woman proves that they are still a long way from knowing the truth about the kidnapping of foreigners by North Korea.
This issue really makes us realize that the abduction issue by North Korea is spread to the world, not just between Japan or South Korea. And in the same year, we get another testimony also from Mr. Charles Jenkins, a Romanian also abducted.
Do you know this woman? Yeah.
That's Donna.
That's who?
Donna from Romania original.
Charles Jenkins confirms that at least one European was abducted by North Korea, a young Romanian woman called Doina Bumbea, taken in 1978. Charles knew her well.
She told me one time, just wait, North Korea's gonna get overthrown, the government. It's gonna go back to capitalists. And we're gonna live right here just like we're living now, but we're gonna live good. What she told me.
Doina Bumbea, a pretty young woman originally from Craiova, Romania, where her brother and mother still live. The last time he saw his sister, Gabriel Bumbea, was 9 years old. Doina was 26 at that time, and she was like a second mother to him. Very young and full of passion for drawing and painting, she finished her studies and moved to Rome. 2 years later, she disappeared. I only learned that she was kidnapped in 2007, when pieces of information from Charles Jenkins' book started appearing on the internet. Nobody in my family knew anything about these kidnappings in 1978. My sister had simply just disappeared.
S-a produs în 1978, când a dispărut complet.
Gabriel learnt from the former deserter's book that his sister had died in 1997. But he needed to be certain, and so, in 2008, Gabriel traveled to Japan to meet Charles Jenkins in person. It was him that told me that she was called Doina Bumbea, that she was Romanian, and that she had lived in Italy. He also knew that her father had been an officer in the Romanian army, and that her mother had been deported. It was only then that I really was certain there are not two families in the world that would have had all these similarities. Doina, a prisoner of the North Korean regime for all these years, it was completely incomprehensible to her mother. At 82 years old, her grief still cuts deep. North Korea took everything from her.
They took my spirit, my joy, my soul. We loved each other so much. We always had plenty to say to each other. Of course, I had my little boy Gabriel, but her and I used to stay up late into the night talking. What did they take from me? They took my soul.
To try and understand what happened to Doina, we decided to track down one of her old friends. Sergio Ferrero met Doina in the 1970s, and he now lives in Ibiza in Spain. It was Sergio who organized the talented artist's first exhibition. This is an album from a long time ago. It was taken in 1975 in the European Cultural Center in Rome. This is Doina standing next to me. And here is another photo we took at that time. It was in a gallery. She wanted to be happy, to be strong, to be successful. She wanted to be famous. She grabbed any opportunity that was available. She was very ambitious then. Oh yes, she was a talented painter. Her work was selling well, and it was the beginning of a promising career. Sergio has kept a few of Doina's artworks, and he still remembers very clearly the last time he spoke to her. I didn't hear from her after the exhibition in the European Cultural Center for 2 or 3 months. And then one day she called me from Tokyo. She said, "Listen, Sergio, thanks to you, I'm in the Hilton Hotel in Tokyo, and I have a painting exhibition here. It's a big success. It's fantastic. Kisses. Ciao." So it's very possible that she met someone there who had a gallery, who asked her to take a trip with him. It would have been very easy to get her to Tokyo with a promise of an exhibition. After the telephone call, Doina Bumbea disappeared. She was kept prisoner in North Korea for 19 years. In Pyongyang, Charles Jenkins saw her often, until her death in 1997.
And she apparently died in North
Yes, lung cancer. And what he made it worse, she used to die. They diagnosed her with lung cancer. And about 6 or 7 months later, she died.
On top of hundreds of Japanese and probably thousands of South Koreans, one Romanian victim was definitely kidnapped by North Korea. So the kidnapped targets were not only from Asia, but from Europe as well. Doina is not an isolated case, as former North Korean spy Kim Jung II can confirm. He refuses to say whether he was involved in the kidnappings, but he remembers often seeing Europeans in Pyongyang towards the end of the 1980s. They were there to teach the spies their native languages, and they were very noticeable. Did you see those European women? Yes, of course. Do you remember how many of them you saw? Well, you know, it's very rare to see foreigners in North Korea. It's difficult to say. How many did you see? At the language school, I saw about 15. About 15 women? Yes, I think I saw about that. You know, that in North Korea we didn't see many foreigners at all, so I couldn't tell whether they were from Holland or somewhere else. We could only tell if they were black or white or a bit tanned. It's impossible to say whether they were French or Dutch or Americans. The Japanese authorities have the testimony of former North Korean spies who state that there were European hostages in Pyongyang. Back in Tokyo, we're trying to get a precise number of foreigners kidnapped. We're with the Minister for the Kidnappings by North Korea, and he tells us something very surprising. In fact, 4 Lebanese women were kidnapped in 1978. They were liberated in 1979, thanks to the efforts of their government. The Lebanese refused to back down. They forced the North Koreans to free the 4 women. We have found the stories of these 4 Lebanese women. In this Lebanese newspaper, dated the 9th of November 1979, an article tells the story of these young women who were kidnapped and then freed a year later. It's especially interesting because of the details of what the women witnessed while they were being kept on a North Korean military base. There were 28 young women, including 3 French women, 2 Italians, 3 Dutch, and women from the Middle East and Eastern Europe. They told us that it was impossible for all these women to resist. We did some research and tracked down the 4 women. One returned to North Korea, where she married another American deserter. One took refuge in the United States. The remaining 2 still live in Lebanon. But they refused to meet with us. They didn't want to talk about what happened. In Tokyo, one man has worked on the kidnappings for a long time. He's the president of the main association for the disappeared in Japan. Tonight, in one of his offices in the center of the Japanese capital, Tsutomu Nishioka shows us a shocking document that came from the North Korean administration. A list of all the foreigners who were living in Pyongyang in 2010. There are dozens of Japanese and South Koreans, a few Chinese citizens, and people of 15 other nationalities. On the list, there are 85 Japanese people and 39 of various other nationalities. There's Xian, the Lebanese woman who went back to live there. But there's not Anocha, the Thai woman who disappeared, or Doina, the Romanian. There's a Russian man who works in a factory that produces everyday products. He's 51 years old. There's also a German. It says that he does manual work for the army. There's also another German who works in a factory. And there's a woman from Czechoslovakia. She is a housewife. And then there's a French woman. She's 91 years old and married to an officer in the North Korean army. For several years, the president of the association has been accumulating clues about the presence of the kidnapped Europeans living in Pyongyang. He admits that those who know the most are the former North Korean spies that are now in the south. There is one among them that is particularly well known. Kim Jung II is today a refugee in South Korea, and her story is incredible. Due to fear of reprisals by the North Koreans, the ex-spy lives under constant police protection. She goes nowhere without at least 6 bodyguards. Kim Jung II is in fact a reformed terrorist, shown here in 1987 when she was arrested after having blown up an airplane. It was one of Korean Air's Boeings and 115 people died. She still recalls the moment when she put the bomb on the plane.
I thought about all the people that would lose their lives in a few moments. It was difficult, but I was convinced that I was acting for the best, to reunify our two countries.
The young spy had been completely brainwashed.
We were like that. When a commanding officer ordered a soldier to put a bomb somewhere, we didn't think about the difficulties. The soldier had received a mission to put a bomb in a certain place, and it had to be done. That's how we were trained. At the time, they said to me that what I was doing was helping to provoke a revolution in South Korea, which would lead to the unification of our two countries. I was ready to fight and to die to achieve this goal.
Condemned to death but pardoned a few years later in exchange for information on the North Korean regime, Kim Jung II knows perfectly well the North Korean Secret Service and how they operate. She claims, in addition, at least one French citizen was kidnapped by North Korea. It was in a military residence in Pyongyang that a cook told her about something that had happened there.
She told me about a young foreign woman that had lived in the residence. She was French. Apparently, she had been seduced by a North Korean agent in Europe. He asked her to go on a trip with him. But when she had arrived, the agent disappeared and the political officers arrived. The young woman started to protest and complain and ask where her boyfriend had gone and why she was being locked up. I was told that she was taken to the toilets and beaten for having refused to obey an order. She was covered in bruises and the cook saw tears in her blue eyes as the soldiers took her off somewhere else.
Europeans are being kidnapped by North Korea. In Asia, everyone knows about these events, but not in Europe. In France, the disappearance of French citizens from foreign countries is normally followed by the Minister for Foreign Affairs. So we ask for an interview with him. After several weeks of waiting and hoping, we finally get an answer. I'm sorry, but I have instructions to refuse your request for an interview. It's simply because we have no substantial information about these disappearances. It's not that we don't have much information, it's that we have nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. According to our information, France was warned several times over the years about the kidnapping of French citizens by North Korea. But for the French diplomats, the claims didn't even merit a look through the archives. The testimony of former spies or freed hostages are very clear. Europeans were abducted. They were French, Dutch, and Italian. We decide to speak to the police in these countries, but once again we're refused. Neither the French, Dutch, or Italian police have any information they can give us. They claim they have never even heard about these events. But today, the international community is finally beginning to deal with this issue. So the solution may in fact lie with the United Nations. For several months, the Commission on Human Rights has started investigating. Fujita Takashi has even spoken in front of the Commission about his brother, held against his will in Pyongyang for 37 years. We went to meet the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in North Korea in London during a special conference. In his report released in February last year, Maruski Darusman condemns the kidnappings and even advises that a commission be created to investigate crimes against humanity. And for him, this is a matter of urgency.
There is hope, of course, that the people are still alive, but the sooner the investigations take place, the greater the hope that we will be able to determine whether or not these people are still living in North Korea or anywhere else. It is the task of the Commission of Inquiry to finally make a determination on this matter once and for all. And that is the intent, the objective, and that is to get the truth, to get to the bottom of the issue, to get at the truth of the matter, finally after so many years.
The search for the truth. Every year in Tokyo, hundreds of families come together. And every September, the Japanese capital commemorates the liberation of the first of those kidnapped by North Korea. In this room, there are former hostages and the families of those still missing. One after another, they come up to the microphone to explain their anger and their pain. The now famous mother of Megumi, the young girl of 13 who was taken, is the last to speak.
Hello. Thank you so much for all your support over all these years. If you, North Korea, want to become a great nation in the eyes of the world, you must first free our dear children, those that you have taken from us. Give them back to the warmth of their parents' arms. We are enraged. Our anger is all-consuming. I would just like to see Megumi again, even just for a second, even from far away, or just to speak to her, just for a word. Then I can die.
According to the associations of the Japanese disappeared, there are still hundreds of kidnapped victims in Pyongyang. They've been kept there for 40 years. People from Japan, South Korea, some from China, 3 from Malaysia, 1 from Thailand, and almost certainly several other European citizens.